Hello and welcome to my science tutorials. In today's video, I want to look at how to draw a straight line when given its equation. Now, let's begin. Now, there are several standard forms of writing the equation of a straight line. So we'll be looking at those forms one by one. Now, if we look at the first example, the first diagram we have over here, we can see the Cartesian plane, the x and then the y axis, and then we can see a straight line here. This line is of the form x is equal to a. So whenever we have an equation given to us and it's of the form just x is equal to a number, this is how the graph looks like. This means that we don't have the y component of the coordinate, and so we only have the x component, so which means the y component is 0. So we have x and 0, so the point is over here, and then that becomes a straight line vertically upwards and is always parallel to the y-axis. Right, now when we have the second example over here, this sort of graph where we have the line being horizontal and parallel to the x-axis is of the form y is equal to, let's say, a number b. So whenever we just have the y coordinate, it means the x coordinate is 0, and therefore since x is 0 and y is 2, the point is located somewhere on the y-axis, and then it becomes a horizontal straight line which is parallel to the x-axis, as you can see over here. Now the next form in which the equation of a line can appear is of the form y is equal to mx. This form means that the equation or the line that you are about to draw has a gradient, or it is slightly tilted. So it's not going to be a vertical line, it's not going to be a horizontal line, but it will be slightly tilted. Now, because it does not have plus c attached to it, this form of straight line always passes through the origin. They always pass through the origin. So let's say we have y is equal to 4x. This graph or this line will always pass through the origin. That is how these sort of graphs behave. So they always pass through the origin and they have a gradient. So we can just extend these lines over here to get a horizontal and vertical component, and we can use those values to calculate the gradient for both lines. Now the last form in which it can take is this form where we normally say y is equal to ms plus c. Now in this form, we can see that there is a constant attached to the mx, which is c. So that means that this line now does not pass through the origin, but it cuts the y-axis at a particular number, and that number becomes our constant, or c. So if you look at this graph over here, the one at the top is cutting the y-axis at 1, as you can see over here. So it means our constant is 1. Over here you can see that there is minus 1 here, so which means the gradient here is 1. So we have minus 1 here, so therefore this line is cutting the y-axis at minus 1, and therefore the minus 1 becomes our constant. So for this sort of graph, y is equal to ms plus c, they don't pass through the origin, they are not vertical or horizontal, they are slanted. You can find their gradient, and they always cut through the y-axis at a particular point. Now let's have a look at an example of a given equation and how we can use those equations to draw a straight line on the Cartesian plane. Alright, so we are to sketch the lines x is equal to 5, y is equal to 10, and y is equal to x on the same axis. We are to describe the triangle formed by these lines. Okay, so this is a very good example. Let's go ahead and look at that. All right, so we have here our solution. So we have the line s is equal to 5, y is equal to 10. Sorry, this is supposed to be 0. It's 0 here. Y is equal to 0, so it's 0 here, and then the last one is y is equal to x. All right, so since we have these guys direct, we can go ahead and label our Cartesian plane. So we have our y-axis we have our x-axis. So let me label it. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, so the first one we have is x is equal to 5. As we've seen in the previous illustration, whenever we have just the value x is equal to a number, it means it is going to be vertical and it will be parallel to the y-axis. So we have here s is equal to 5. So okay, so this is our line. Now we have the second line is y is equal to 0. So we have our y to be 0. Because y is 0, is going to lie on the horizontal axis, which is our x-axis. Because in the previous example we saw that whenever y is equal to a number, it is always horizontal and parallel to the x-axis. This time around it is not 1 for us to draw it at the top here, it is 0, so it will be on the axis over here. Oh, now that is a terrible line. Alright, so let me just use freehand sketch. So it is going to be on this axis over here. Okay, now the last one is y is equal to x. So y is equal to x means when x is 1, y is 1, when x is 2, y is 2. We realize that it will be at the middle over here. So it will be a straight line moving upward from the origin. So let's draw that. So we have something like this. Okay, so this is our line x is equal to 5. This is our line y is equal to 0, and this is our line y is equal to s over here. Alright, so this is the triangle that we have. We can see that from the triangle, this is a right angled triangle. Since this is a straight horizontal line, this is a straight vertical line, and this is a diagonal line cutting the both of them. So this would be a right angle triangle. So the triangle formed over here will be an isosceles right angle triangle. So we have isosceles right angled triangle. Alright, so let's proceed. Now we have the second example. We have to draw y is equal to x minus 1 and 3x plus 4y is equal to 24 on the same axis. Right, so let's proceed to go and look at the solution for this problem. So we have the equation y is equal to x minus 1, and then we have another equation 3x plus 4y equals 24. Now in order for us to plot these equations, we need to get the coordinate or the points for this particular graph. Now what we need to do is, first of all, we say let y be equal to 0. If y is 0, then it means that we substitute y here. We have 0 is equal to x minus 1, which therefore means that if I bring the negative 1 here, I have 1 is equal to x. So therefore it means when y is equal to 0, we have the point 1, 0, where 1 is the x value that we found over here. Sorry, when 1 is the x value that we found over here and y is the 0 that we said it should be. The second thing we said we do is to say let x be equal to 0. Now when x is 0, we have y is equal to 0 minus 1, and therefore y is equal to negative 1. So when s is equal to 0, we have 0 minus 1 as our point for us to plot. Alright, let's look at the second scenario. So we do the same thing. We say let y be 0, and if y is 0, we have 3x over here to be equal to 24, and our x is 24 on 3. So which means our value of x over here, 24 on 3, will give us 8. Will give us 8 over here. So when y is equal to 0, we have the point x, which is 8, and then y, which is 0. The second one, we say let x be equal to 0. Now if x is 0, this becomes 0, so we have 4y is equal to 24. We divide both sides by 4, then we have our y to be equal to 24 on 4, that will give us 6. So the point we have over here will become our x, which is 0, and then our y, which is 6. Now that we have these 4 points, we can go ahead and plot them on the Cartesian plane. So I have my y-axis, my x-axis, this is my origin. So I can go ahead and label my axis. I have 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have here -1, -2, -3. I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so this is 8, and okay, so the next thing I do is to plot them equation by equation. So the first equation, I have x to be 1, y is equal to 0. So x is 1, y is equal to 0. So the first point is x, which is over here, y is 0, so they will meet at this side. So I write the point. Whenever you plot a point, always make sure you write the point. So this will be my first point, 1, 0. Okay, now the second point is 0, -1. So my x is 0, which is over here, and my y is -1, so it will meet over here. So that becomes 0, -1. Okay, so now this becomes my 2 points, and then I can now join them in a straight line to have my straight line graph. So it's going to look something like this. Okay, so now that I'm done plotting these 2 points and drawing the line, I need to write the equation on the line. So I have y is equal to s minus 1. Alright, so let me plot the second points for this equation. I have 8, 0. So x is 8, y is 0. So it will meet on the point 8 over here. So I can write that over there. So I have 8, 0. Then I have the second one, 0, 6. So x is 0, y is 6. So it is over here. So I have here 0, 6. Alright, so I can now also join these 2 points over here in a straight line. Okay, so after joining them, I can now write the equation on it. So I have 3x plus 4y is equal to 24. And this is how our graph is going to look like when you when you plot these 2 equations on your Cartesian plane. Now note that I'm using a freehand sketch, and so my lines are not straight. You need to use a ruler on your graph to have your lines very straight. Alright, let's look at one final example. So in this example, we have to sketch the following on the same axis. We have the first equation to be x plus 3y minus 6 is equal to 0. So we have x plus 3y minus 6 equals 0. Then we have the second equation, y is equal to 2 minus x. Alright, so let's look at what we do first. So we say let x be 0. And when x is 0, we have this equation become 0 plus 3y minus 6 equals 0. So we have 3y is equal to, I send the -6 to the other side, becomes +6. So therefore y equals 2 if I divide both sides by 3. So it means my point over here becomes x will be 0, my y will be 2. Now I now say let y now be 0. If y is 0, I have x plus 3 into bracket 0 minus 6 equals 0. So x plus 0 minus 6 equals 0. So x is therefore equal to, I send the -6 to the other side, becomes +6. So therefore my point over here is 6 and 0. Alright, so let me tackle this second equation now. I say let x be equal to 0, and if that is the case, y will be equal to 2 minus 0. So y is equal to 2. So I have here 0, 2 as my point. The 0 is the x, the 2 is the y value over here. From there I say let y be 0 now. So I have here 0 is equal to 2 minus x. So I bring the negative s to this side of the equation, it becomes s is equal to 2. So I have the second point to be 2, 0. Alright, so from there I can go ahead and plot my graph. So I label my axes. So I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, let me see, 5. Okay, this is 6 over here. So for this guy I'm going to use red, and this guy, this equation, I'm going to use blue. Alright, so let's plot the red one. So for the red we have x is 0, y is 2. So x is 0, y is positive 2. That will be at the top over here. So I label that 0, 2. And then for the second point I have 6, 0. So x is 6, which is over here, y is 0, so it will also be on the same axis. So I have over here 6, 0. So this become my two lines, and then I can now draw a straight line connecting the two of them. So something like this. Okay, so now that I have this, I can now write my equation on them. So this will be x plus 3y minus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, now let's plot the second line. That will be blue. So for the second line we have 0, which is x, and 2 for y. So 0, which is x, and 2, that will also be over here. So we have the second point also over here. So I'll do that 0, 2. And then I have 2, 0. So my x is 2, my y is 0. So that will be over here. So I have over here 2, 0. Okay, so my second line is from here coming down like this. Alright, so I can now write my equation here. Y is equal to 2 minus x, and this becomes my equation on this particular straight line. So this is how we draw straight lines or line on a graph when you are given their equation. The first thing you need to do is to analyze which form of the equation is the equation given to you is, whether it's just s is equal to a number, let's say s is equal to a, or y is equal to b, or let's say y is equal to mx, or y is equal to mx plus c, so that you know the form in which the graph will take. And from there, if you have an equation, you make x the subject, then you get your value of y. You make x 0, you get the value of y. You make y 0, you get the value of x, and then you plot those 2 points together to have your straight line on the graph. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.